Welcome to Learning Aloud, a podcast from the Organizational Dynamics community at the University of Pennsylvania, produced to inspire purposeful leadership practice and transform organizational experience. I am your host, Stephen G. Hart. All right, well, today we welcome back Alan Barstow, Senior Scholar from the Organizational Dynamics program. And Alan, you were with us in our pilot series for our podcasts. And since you were the first one of our pilot series and we weren't quite sure where this was going to go, we offered a specific challenge to our listening audience. Remind us what that challenge was.
Hi, Steve. Hey, it's good to be back. Boy, that was such a long time ago. I can barely remember. No, it was not that long ago. This has been an exciting series of podcasts that we've done. But where we started, we started talking about building, developing, formulating, and I think we sort of hit on creating the
ideal organization.
The ideal organization. And one of the reasons I think we picked up on that is because that's similar to language that Russ Ackoff used years ago, 1981, creating the corporate future, creating the ideal organization. So it has some history, a track record, but we're moving on. We've done something more than that since then. We're not just conveying Russ's great ideas. We're developing those ideas. We're standing on those shoulders and moving forward. And in doing so, and in the conversations we've had here and talking to people about doing podcasts and explaining why we're doing this, some really interesting language comes up. And so instead of developing or building, we really said, well, what this whole program is about, the learning organization, it's about coming to a coming to a program, a master's degree program at Penn, which, continuing your learning. You have your expertise, but there's more to learn. Quite honestly, I think the courses you do and the other courses that I do and other faculty in the Dynamics program are all about learning. I'm beginning to see leader as learner, as the viable, resilient, figure in an organization. We all need to learn, but the person who can create that ability and space for others to learn, that's key. So what does it come down to? Yeah, learning is key. We're trying to give voice to people, not just broadcast the voice of the CEO or the professor in the classroom. It's creating voice. It's asking questions and adding the voices of everybody else in the room. So voice is important. So we started playing with that and emergent, and we decided that, I don't think any one person said this. I think it sort of emerged in the interaction of conversation, but we've come to learning aloud. We're trying to get people to learn together. To learn together, you have to voice your thoughts, your ideas. You have to share them. And certainly, you've been important in helping us think about that. So learning aloud. And I suppose we can talk about Aloud. A-L-O-U-D is what I have in mind.
Right, let's go in with that, because there's a double meaning here that I think is a really important part of this fabulous new title.
Yeah, it is good. So my thought was learning aloud. You do have to voice, you have to listen to other people's voice and ideas. So that's a big part of what we're doing. So the appeal for me was learning aloud. If we can do that in front of each other, we can create the opportunity for people to say, hey, wait a minute, what about, or what if, and it doesn't have to be the ranking person in the group. So often the leader or the authority figure gives an idea and says, well, what do you think about that? And he puts people in the position of, well, do I agree with that or do I disagree? Is it a yes or no? What's wrong with saying, I don't know what to do? What do you think? And leaving the space for others to fill that. And that's where the learning aloud comes in. Now, there's another side of that meaning, learning aloud.
As in permission.
As in A-L-L-O-W-E-D. It's amazing to me how many organizations learning is not allowed. It's learning is disabled, not enabled. It's about, well, that's interesting, but we do it this way here. This is how we do it. This is proven. This has stood the test of time. So that's an interesting idea you have, but just do this. Do what I tell you to do. And that's not learning aloud. So that's certainly an important thought that I think we have to create that space for people to share ideas. We are constantly putting those ideas on the back burner and saying, oh, well, that's interesting, but we don't have time for that right now. We have an agenda. So we can't deal with that now. Good idea, but let's continue with the direction we were going. So that's what occurs to me when I hear learning aloud. And that, thank you for mentioning that, because that hadn't occurred to me.
Yeah, well, it came out of our community of listeners, as we hoped, right? People gave us some feedback, and we collected that and played around with some of the ideas. And actually, the very first iteration of this was called Learning Out Loud. And Sean Hayashi, who has been on this show with us before, called me and says, that's grammatically incorrect. So she actually coined the aloud part of it. So we thank Sean for that piece. But I think what it suggests to me is two things, essentially. One is it seems very inclusive, that we want people to not be afraid to hide their thoughts and to speak out and things that they're concerned about them, to ask the questions that they need answers to. And I think the second thing it does for me is it gives people a sense of openness to idea generation, and the fact that our organizations are better when we can have productive conversations.
I love this. Out loud, learning out loud. Well, yeah, you could express it as long as it was outside of the meeting, outside of the, in the coffee room, in the men's bathroom, in the ladies' bathroom, in the carpool. But if it wasn't in, so aloud. It's interesting. Yes, certainly it's grammatical, but we started with out loud because that's the vernacular. That's what we say. But even as we write it aloud, then we enrich the concept with the paradox in different meetings. So this question of how to do this is also central to organizational dynamics. It's the question of culture, organizational culture, voice. It's the patterns of thought and behavior that are transmitted and considered effective. These are all parts of what we study. And this question of culture comes in then. These patterns establish themselves and become norms and become oftentimes fossils and artifacts because we need to change and we haven't changed them. So this idea of resilience, emergence, or needing to disrupt an organization. It's a successful organization, but it needs to be disruptive or its success will become its failure. So this question of culture is central. A lot of times I think people look at organizational politics or organizational culture as just those negative sides of things that don't allow things to learn and progress and be effective. No, there's a range in culture. There's a range in these things from high to low, strong on both ends. So this question of an organizational culture that allows inquiry, allows voice, allows people to ask questions, allows people to disagree aloud. That's not easy to do. But it is what we need to do, and I think we see good examples of that in the classroom space that we have in our seminars. But we see that coming in because this is what our instructors who are practicing consultants and our participants, our students who are mid-career professionals, this is the experience they have. It's very rich. So we see that this question of culture, culture is not a bad thing. It's there. Make it positive. And it does need to change, and they will change. But how do you get these cultures to change? And that's where learning aloud, it's allowed to change the culture. And you do it by voicing your ideas. This is an important aspect, I think.
So another good thing, I think, from a branding perspective, if you will, of these podcasts, is I think it opens the frame to all kinds of possibilities, as opposed to being maybe more narrowly focused around creating the ideal organization. I think we now have a much broader spectrum of possibilities to include content and thought leaders and students and faculty from the program who are doing interesting things, and really explore with them how they are creating and helping people to create this learning aloud concept in how they're teaching, how they're learning, and how they're practicing the work.
Yeah, I think this question of frames is central. In some courses we talk about frame breaking, but we also say, well, no, it's not that the old frames are bad or wrong, but they're not adequate. They're not sufficient. We need new frames. So this idea of bringing in new ideas, complex adaptive systems and complexity theory. If nothing else, it teaches us that we don't have the answers, and the answers aren't. We don't have a recipe. And even someone who's been successful in the past and has a blueprint or a set of steps from their experience, no, that's not enough. Sure, that's useful, but it's probably not sufficient. Emergent and resilience and the disruption. All of these things are ways that organizations need to change. And if things are going to emerge, then we have to, in a sense, allow and create that space for people to share ideas. It's not known. In fact, when you set out to solve a problem in today's world, it's not clear that if we go too soon to decide which possibility or which plan of action if we select the plan of action too soon, we're going to have short-circuited our formulation of the problem and our sense of, well, what are the possibilities? What are the range of things we could do? And no one person is going to see all of the possibilities, which is again why we have to share these things aloud. And probably no one's going to win. It's not going to be my idea or your idea. We're going to come to a new idea based on the strengths of what you've said and what I've said and what Mary has said. These three, all the people have something to say about this, and the synthesis is probably going to be the successful solution. But we cut way too soon to selection. Get there first. Action. We need action. You got to get there quickly, and we need to slow ourselves down in that. And that's also, you need to create the space and the time for people to talk. I love that. I'm not good at this. This is one thing I know I continue to learn. Don't fill the space with your own voice. Ask a question and wait. Wait for someone to break the ice. Don't you break the ice.
Sweat the silence. Yeah. Well, Alan, I'm really excited to present future podcasts now under our new title, Learning Aloud. I think it offers a wonderful variety of opportunities and thought leaders, as I said, to the program. And I want to thank you for your help and for your consistent faith in this idea that we had to build these podcasts. It's greatly appreciated. And I know that the people who are listening, those who I've spoken to, are thankful that we have this series of podcasts, and we look forward to having you back in the future, as well as other people on the other side of this microphone who are looking for an opportunity to express themselves in the learning aloud environment. We've had a lot of really good speakers, guests, I guess, Steve. Thank you for those. You've created many of those. And they've all created something new. This is pushing us forward. It's putting our ideas, which can get stale. It's making them current and keeping them current. So thank you for that. And it's been exciting to be part of it. Well, it's my pleasure. And thank you very much, everybody out there who contributed to helping us come up with our new title. We look forward to presenting new programs in the year ahead. Thank you very much.